Imagine you are having a normal day. You wake up, go to work, take breaks, and enjoy the little pleasures you have squirreled away. While you didn't know it, your life would forever be changed. One moment you're in your office, the next, you are lost in a forest with fantastical Pokemon. Born of Desire by Fuggmann tells the story of one man's journey to become the very best, like no one ever was. Howdy everyone, my name is Hit Games, and today I want to share my thoughts with you about a red novel series called Born of Desire. Born of Desire is, at the time of recording, one of the top 10 series on Royal Road. Royal Road is a community self-published writing website that holds a lot of inspired short stories, fan fictions, and web novels. If you like what I say here today, and feel free to check out the website and discover your new favorite web novel to get lost in. For this video, I'm going to go over the first 10 chapters of the story and break down what happens. Then I will share my thoughts on the story so far. In the prologue, we are introduced to the main character of the story, Julian Angelino, a middle management employee of DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. After an experiment goes wrong, Julian is transported to the middle of the woods, and after being scared off by Spinnerack, flees until he runs into the territory of a community of wild Lucario. Taking pity on Julian, they decide to take him to their village. Chapter 1 is where this Pokemon Isekai becomes different than others. While Julian is staying inside the Lucario village, he discovers the physics are different in this world than the old one. The rule of cool, as Julian calls it, applies here, from ninja running and shouting while striking to a physical effect using the bonds of friendship. Chapter 2 starts with Julian testing the rules of his new world. Spending more and more time at the Lucario village, Julian becomes more attached to the Lucario. The village is eventually attacked by a wild Gabite, and Julian shows his commitment to the village by throwing himself in the way of it. After proving himself, Julian and his new partner Pokemon, a Lucario that goes by the name Lulu, leaves the village and begins their Pokemon adventure. They get to a town and Julian gets registered as a trainer. While in town, they meet another trainer named Paul, and after some arguing, start a battle. Paul sends out his Chimchar against Lucario, hoping his fire typing would get him the win, but after a couple of minutes, and Julian using his rule of cool knowledge, one-sidedly defeats Paul. Afterwards, Julian and Lulu talk with Rapidash and get a job as a farmhand at a local farm after proving their teamwork. Working at the Miltank farm for a couple of weeks, Julian gathers information and supplies for his Pokemon journey. While out for a delivery, he runs into Paul again, and after a brief discussion, is invited to travel with him, which Julian accepts. Saying his goodbyes to the denizens of the farm, Julian and Lulu meet up with Paul at the local Pokemon lab. Paul receives a Pokédex and are about to leave until Ash Ketchum and Pikachu arrive to receive updates of their own. Paul acts like his usual self and antagonizes Ash until they have a battle. Both decide to use their Starlies for the battle, and despite Ash's best effort, loses. Paul, dissatisfied with his Starly's performance in the battle, decides to release the Pokemon then and there. After the battle, Julian and Paul travel to Jubilife City, and on the way, Julian reveals to Paul that he can talk with Pokemon. During their travels, the group runs into Ash and friends again. This, of course, leads to Paul and Ash battling again. But this time, Ash's friend Dawn wants to make it a double battle with Julian. Lulu easily defeats Plimplop. Once again, Paul wins against Ash, this time using Chimchar against Ash's Turtwig. Julian and Paul enter Jubilife City after Paul fails to catch a Pokemon to add to his team. Inspired, Julian begins to think about what kind of Pokemon he should recruit for his team. His search is not a long one, as while exploring the city after dark, he enters a fitness gym, where he meets a Machoke. After a brief spar, the owner of the Machoke decides to give him to Julian so that Machoke can achieve his full strength. After some chit-chat, Julian decides to name him Anki. Anki acts like a big brother to the group, and Julian tries to find more ways to cultivate the rule of cool energy. While trying to buy tickets to a Pokemon contest, Julian meets a young girl named Zoe. Quickly hitting it off, she decides to help him earn some money by battling a 2v2 at the local park. Zoe and Julian make short work of the local kids and make enough money to buy their tickets. Now that I've told you the first 10 chapters of the story, I like to cover the pros, cons, and my thoughts. First things first, I would like to commend the book about how fast it gets to the action scenes. From the recap, you can probably guess about how many battles actually occur in this book. In every 1.5 chapters of this story, I would say there is at least one Pokemon battle. The battles are not just put there as filler, but help flesh out the characters and concepts so that you, the reader, can understand them better. The story does a good job with world building and incorporating the Pokemon as a vital part of the world. Too often I read stories that are just a normal world that happen to have Pokemon in it, other than giving the feeling that humanity has lived side by side with Pokemon for millennia. I would also like to say I was really impressed with the author's implication of the rule of cool in the story. Although I have heard of the concept, I have never seen the rule of cool implicated inside of a story. I thought it was imaginative and unique to use it here. Brief shout out for the author having the main character take notes at the start of the chapters to help flesh out more of the world and the systems in case the reader was confused. Now for the cons. Although I did enjoy Paul and the main character having a less than perfect relationship, I felt like Paul would cave in to Julian's demands a little too fast. I would also have to say the main character comes off as really unlikable. He is really immature for his age. He gets into a lot of arguments and he lectures and wants to constantly show off to other 10-year-olds. My final thoughts on the story. First, I need to come clean and say that I am very biased. Gen 4 is my favorite Pokemon generation. Seeing my favorite Pokemon starters doing battle really hits me in the nostalgia. I really enjoyed the story, but one thing stops me from recommending this. It is the constant sexual themes in the story. I constantly found myself rolling my eyes and sighing out loud whenever Fuggmann finds a chance to insert sexual suggestions into the story, and I had to force myself to power through it. Once again, I have to say that I did enjoy the story, but if I had to give an example, it is like watching a Quentin Tarantino film. The films are good, but if you watch long enough, you'll start to wonder why there are so many scenes with women's bare feet. Once again, if you like the story and you want to read more, then please go to royalroad.com. If you agree or disagree with me today, or would you like me to review another story, please leave a comment. I would love to know what you think.